Food be thy medicine, and medicine be thy food. This saying has been credited to one of the most important figures in the history of medicine, a Greek physician known as Hippocrates. He acknowledges the importance of eating healthy to acquiring the nutrients needed for disease prevention and maintaining overall good health. But what if that crucial element is being overlooked? Once again, I'm Tatiana Austria, your host for today's episode of Lifeline, where we improve our lives by feeding our minds. Today's episode is Dr. Elaine Cunanan, an endocrinologist from the USC Hospital. So how are you, Doc?
Hello, good afternoon to everyone.
Can you tell us a little bit about what an endocrinologist is?
Yeah, so an endocrinologist, yung endocrine, no, the term, it's a subspecialty of internal medicine which deals with hormones. So diseases of hormonal production. So it could be overproduction or underproduction, or we call it resistance sometimes. But the most common patients that we see would be patients with diabetes or thyroid problem.
Now, with that being said, we can now dive into our special round of questions regarding our diet. Doc, may we ask, what is your definition of a so-called well-balanced diet?
Yeah, so when it comes to diet, of course, sabi nga natin well-balanced, marami kasi siyang, in a way, content, no? So, or ingredients. So we have what we call it macronutrients. So that includes yung mga go, grow, and glow foods. We have carbohydrates, fats, and proteins. And then we have micronutrients as well, so which includes the vitamins and minerals. So when you say well-balanced, ideally, every time we eat, each meal should have a portion of each of those macro and micronutrients.
Bale, Doc, dito po yung papasok yung plate that we learned about in elementary school.
Yung pinggang Pinoy.
Yes, yung pinggang Pinoy. And how does portion control play a part in maintaining a balanced diet?
So when you say well-balanced, so generally kasi, di ba, much of the time, since it depends on our activity, so if you're more active, then you need more of the go foods, which is carbohydrates. So, most of the time, mga 60% yon nung total. Now, of course, if you're not as active, then probably 45 to 50% would be the carb portion. So, yun nga. So, important din doon is yung total amount. So, pag nasobrahan, if you eat more of the carbs, for example, then one possible complication is posibleng tumaas ang blood sugar, or sometimes kasi if you are not exercising enough, hindi mo siya nababurn, then it adds to the fat that we have. So you gain weight, and worst case scenario, sometimes it can also go to the liver. So as liver fat. So that's why you've heard of fatty liver. Mm-hmm. So minsan ang mentality natin pag fatty liver, dala nung excess fats. But in reality, if you eat more of the sweets or carbohydrates, and you don't exercise it off, then it actually becomes fat in the liver.
Dun siya natitira, and it builds up and it builds up. Yes. Okay po, Doc. So there are different trends nowadays when it comes to diet. There are also diet practices out there such as veganism, vegetarianism, and the internet is a huge place. Now, I would like to ask also, what are the pros and cons about these sorts of diet practices?
So when you say vegan, strictly speaking, you only eat plant sources. Then even eggs and milk would not be allowed. Pag vegetarian naman, more of plant sources pa rin, so vegetables mainly and fruits, but they're allowed to take milk or eggs. Okay, so wala namang problem, no? Kasi as what we say, so plant sources are good for our health. So they just have to be wary of possible nutritional deficiencies. So for example, if you're purely vegan, you're not eating or you're not drinking milk, for example, which is rich in calcium, yes, then they may have calcium deficiency. Also, some vitamins may not be enough in purely plant sources. For example, vitamin B. Mm-hmm. So they have to take, sometimes they may need to take supplements if ever they're purely vegan, or at least look for plant sources which have higher levels of those micronutrients. But in general, in terms of health, so they would lead to less blood sugar increase if you're diabetic. If you're dyslipidemic, you have high cholesterol or high triglyceride, yung what we call as the fat in the blood, then it actually can reduce those harmful substances.
So for people with diabetes, you could say that it's considered as an option for them to take, just an avenue they might want to consider.
They can act if they prefer a vegan or vegetarian diet. That would be a good option for them. There are studies that show that they actually lead to a healthier body and even a better quality of life. But of course, they have to consult their doctor to be sure that they're not gonna have complications. For example, if they may be on drugs that may cause hypoglycemia, so if they restrict their carbohydrate portion too much and they're on drugs that may cause low sugar, then they may be prone to low blood sugar. Yeah, so the best thing there is to consult their doctor whether these diets would be appropriate for them.
So talking about your field, could you mention some examples of different endocrine diseases and the kinds of foods that they might be stemming from?
So in general, we call them as a whole non-communicable diseases. So these are diseases that's not due to infection. Of course, the more common ones would be diabetes. So diabetes in itself, meron namang genetic component. So most of the time, if your parents have it, then most likely you'll get it later on. However, it's also, it can be modified by food or nutrition. So if you're eating healthy, then the chance that you'll get diabetes would be less. However, if you're eating poorly or you're not exercising as much, then the chance that you'll get diabetes would be higher. So for us, mainly it's diabetes itself that's associated with nutrition. All the other conditions that we see, for example, hyperthyroid, hindi naman masyadong associated with nutritional deficiencies or excess, although sometimes if they take in more iodine than usual, then mas lumalabas, yeah. Or if you're hypothyroid, for example, if you're in an area where iodine is not as adequate, then some patients with severe iodine deficiency can develop hypothyroidism or what we call bosyo, no, yung goiter. Yeah. So, yun naman yung usually na associated with nutrition.
Okay, Doc. And as we grow older, we're actually taught to lessen our sugar or red meat consumption. So with that being said, how does age impact one's nutritional needs?
So of course, yun yung hindi natin mapipigilan. As we age, our body ages. So we tend to be more prone to hypertension, high cholesterol, and even high blood sugar. So in terms of food intake naman, as what you said, red meat, it's not really bad. So at a moderate intake, so sabi mo nga portion control, it's not bad. Okay, so paminsan-minsan, okay lang naman. Wag lang lagi-laging mga tawag natin yung mga buffet. So try to lessen kasi tendency nga if you're in an area where it's eat all you can, di ba? You tend to want to compensate for the money that you pay.
And then you grab everything.
Yes, so portion control pa rin is key. So yeah, you can have your cheat days. So sometimes you may want to eat red meat. It's not really bad, but you have to take into account the total food intake that you eat.
Opo, and the clause really here is everything is good in moderation, especially with sugars and red meats. And syempre, ang daming temptations out there when you go out to have a food trip with your buddies. And as a college student, super dami din po kasi ng milk tea stores around.
yung sugar nga na sinasabi mo. So again, it's not really totally bawal, but you have to take into account the other carbohydrates that you take in. For example, I always tell my patients, rather than drinking juice, then better to just take the actual fruit. Kasi the actual fruit would have the vitamins, would have the fiber. Kasi yun yung wala sa juice eh. If you juice it na kahit sabihin mong natural, di ba? Tinatanggal mo yung fiber. So, kulang na rin yung health benefit. So, it's better to just take the fruit as God made it in its natural form rather than coming up with the juice. Kasi tendency, di ba, ang dami mo ring nilalagay eh. So, mataas din ang sugar noon.
So it's really just better to take the fruit as it is. Okay po, so well, that's it for the first part of this episode. Thank you so much, Jock. But stay tuned for our next segment. We'll be discussing how students can maintain a healthy lifestyle, after which we're going to do a short round of Mythical Operation, a segment where we dissect the truth from misconceptions.
To educate about health,
to help you understand your wellness.
here we improve our lives
by feeding our minds.
This is Lifeline.
We're back here on Lifeline, still with our endocrinologist, Doc Elaine, who will be answering some questions about how a student, maybe me, can maintain a healthy lifestyle in school. So, Doc, first of all, I'd like to ask, what are easy ways a student can do in order to ensure that their food is healthy and that the diet is balanced?
Actually, ang hirap nga, no? Kasi, of course, if you look around, puro fast food.
Yes po.
And then, of course, a lot of times, you're pressed for time. You have to go to school early. And then you only have a few minutes or hours for lunch break. So, siguro to give you a overview. Now, when you say healthy, it's more of the food choice. So, you choose more of the natural foods. For example, for carbohydrate. So it's best to choose rice naman is not really bad. If you can have brown rice, the unpolished one, it would be better compared to white rice. But then again, white rice is not really bawal. No? So ano pa? So of course, if aside, sabi nga natin, di ba, portion control. So if you look at your usual plate, so the usual is yung pabilog, di ba? You cut it into 4 quadrants. Half of the quadrant would be carbohydrates. So that's the rice portion. So if you're not a rice eater, pwede naman bread. So rough estimate, you can use your fist as a guide. So for rice, 1 cup would be the size of your fist. So pag mas malaki ka, di mas malaki. If you're smaller, di. So ganon, that's roughly half of, that's 1/4 of your plate, I mean. So you place your carb 1/4 of your plate. Then half of your plate ideally should be green leafy vegetables. So when I look naman dun sa mga usual na restaurants, some of them would have leafy vegetables eh. So as much as possible, half of your plate, fill it up with leafy vegetables, then 1/4 with the carbohydrate. So it could be rice, could be bread. So rough estimate, pag bread naman, mga 2 or 3 slices would be equal to 1 cup rice. And then the other 1/4 will be your meat portion. Could be fish, could be even pork or beef or chicken or egg. So in a plate, then you would have all the macronutrients. So choose the ones that are more natural, so less on the fried. So yun lang yung mahirap, no, kasi a lot of times nga mas pine-prepare nila yung mga fried foods because those are the ones that tend to be chosen by students. But yun, try to keep the fried foods probably less frequent. And then what else? Of course, so yun na yun, nandun na lahat ng macronutrients. So have 1 piece of fruit per meal. So fruit is not really hard to find in our country. And then the juice part, as much as possible, if you can take water would be best. So try to minimize soft drinks or iced tea, milk tea, and juice. So if you can do away with that, kasi in terms of total calories, added calories sila and then they're empty. They have minimal nutrients or vitamins in them. So better to have the fruit and then just take water. What else? So in your snacks, you can have a piece of fruit, a snack. Yes. And choices, instead of the usual, yung mga chichirya na fried.
I honestly feel like ako yung pinapatamaan ni Doc.
So better yung mga nuts. You can actually have nuts. Yes. Yung, of course, the mas foreign na yung kasoy. Our country is rich in cashew. Cashew nuts would be good. Even the usual peanuts, but of course, try to minimize yung fried na naman. And yeah, almonds, those will be good food choices for snacks. And then fruit, pwede rin kamote, but more of the boiled kamote, not the kamote Q, di ba? But okay lang naman paminsan-minsan.
On the topic of snacks, especially around UST, syempre after class, some of our friends would ask each other, what are we gonna eat and what are the things that we're looking forward to, especially in the different meals of the day. Preservatives and fast food have become more convenient options than any other options here on campus. And of course, as an option to our students' busy schedules. Doc, with that said, what is an easy and healthier option you would like to recommend in order to maintain a student's healthy diet, aside from those aforementioned before po? Because around the campus, like, there's so many fast food options, there's so many fried options, but there's little healthier ones.
I guess you just have to look. Kasi I see some restaurants, they're actually offering healthier versions na naman. Then of course, some of you go home, you have home cooked meal. So I see some they would bring baon. So that could be an option as well. Kasi at least, di ba, kung kayo nagluluto or somebody in the family cooks, then mas napipili ninyo yung healthier food.
Yes, for those who actually go home. And now, Doc, there are also some students who go to the dorm, syempre far away from their homes, far away from their families, who usually prepare the food for them. Now they're stuck with making their own diet or making their own food choices. So what advice can you give to those students?
Well, when I was a student, I would go around. So I see there are some karinderya, di ba, outside, which actually cooks healthy vegetables, for example, and then choose more of fish or white meat rather than the red meat. And then, of course, aside from nutrition, exercise is, by the way, important as well, or physical activity. So in terms of physical activity naman,
Hindi po ba sapat yung yung just the usual walking around, hindi na siya sapat?
that would be good. That would be a good exercise. So current recommendation, kahit mga 30 minutes of brisk walking the whole day. So pwede namang hatiin. Like 10 minutes when you go in.
brisk walking.
So brisk walking. So kung malilate ka na, of course, you take the stairs. So here, it's 12 floors. So if you take the 12th floor, you take the stairs going up, that would be good enough exercise for the day. Yeah. And then when you have lectures, for example, usually naman you're given a break, like 30 minutes. So you just stand up, go to the restroom, or walk around. So that would be ways to increase your physical activity.
Those were really great advices you gave us, Doc Elaine. We hope our audience watching, especially our fellow Tomasians na may dorm, or to those who also go back to home to their families, take your advice to heart. So now, Doc, we're moving to our next portion called Mythical Operation, where we dissect the truth from different misconceptions. So for this segment, we're going to mention a few statements, and we invite you to tell us whether these statements are facts or myths. So we can begin. So, Doc Elaine, fact or myth? Eating super late at night is bad for you.
So when we want to see whether that's good or bad, usually, di ba, we base it on studies. So as for us doctors. So there are some evidence that point to the time of meal. Apparently, if you eat more at breakfast and less at dinner, it seems to be better. Okay, but of course, overall, it's still the total calories. So regardless whether you eat in the morning or you eat in the evening, so yung total caloric intake pa rin ang lalabas that would play the most important factor in terms of how your sugar is or how your cholesterol is. Yeah, but yes, there are some studies that show that eating more in the morning seems to be healthier compared to eating more at night. Okay? So, of course, yun din yung sabi natin, the tendency kasi we rush, we forget to eat breakfast.
Alright, so that's a fact for us. Now again, fact or myth, not all types of fat are unhealthy.
You're right, so that's fact. Okay, when you say fats, there's saturated fat, which is considered as the, in a way, unhealthier fat. That's the one that's seen in animal sources. So, pork, beef, or chicken, on the skin of the chicken, that's saturated fat. So that one has been seen to lead to a higher risk for diabetes and even heart attack or stroke. Okay, so it's not really totally bad fat, pero yun nga, try to limit it. So the recommendation is less than 7% of your total calories should be saturated fat. Then, meron din kasi yung mono-unsaturated and polyunsaturated fats, which are considered as the good fat. So, there are studies that show that they actually prevent heart attack or strokes. So, you choose more of that. So, ano naman yung sources nun? More on the nuts or beans.
These can be also seen sa packaging po ng different products, right, Doc? They tend to put that in nowadays to attract more customers then, so that they're known as the healthier option po. Now, maintaining a balanced and healthy diet is expensive or hard to do. Fact or myth, Doc Elaine?
So I guess it could be either, no? Kasi generally nga, we tend to feel that healthy foods tend to be more expensive. But I hope that, syempre, yun ang goal natin, ano, na sana in the restaurants that we have here, they would prepare healthier versions, but ones that are also affordable. Kasi affordable naman din. For example, munggo or kangkong, so those are healthy and they're affordable. Okay, mas hindi lang pinipili ng mga ng mga bumibili. But those can be sources. For example, egg is not that bad. So of course, try to limit lang na laging fried or scrambled. But boiled egg would be a good source of protein. And what else? Fish pala, like salmon or tuna. So those are rich sources of mono unsaturated fats. And the oil also that you use. So for example, olive oil would be rich in monounsaturated fat. So you use that for your salad. But of course, don't use it for cooking. Because if you use it for cooking, it gets degraded. So it's not healthy. Okay, so you choose more of the non-tropical oils, which contain higher amounts of monounsaturated fat and polyunsaturated fat.
Would you say po, Doc, that you believe in investing in healthier options rather than having to spend thousands of pesos on treatments later on in life when it comes to...
That's also right. Okay, so you tend to spend more now for healthier foods, but you have to look at the long run. So since you, in a way, stay healthier longer, less diseases that would entail medications, chronic lifetime medications, then in a way, even if you spend more now, you're actually saving for your future. And then of course, more important kasi is yung quality of life mo. Diba? Sa,
that we protected as
well. You're healthier actually. You feel healthier, you feel better if you eat healthy.
Opo. And lalo tayo mamamotivate na to do the right thing when it comes to our diet then as well, rather than always going for the unhealthy option and somehow degrading then our quality of life po, Doc. Thank you so much, Doc Elaine, for answering our many questions about our health and diet, especially as a student in UST. So thank you so much po, Doc. As we move on from the season of holiday feasts, one must be mindful of the food we intake. Our diets are not about eating less, but about eating the right amount so we can live healthy and productive lives. We hope this episode truly helps us consume more knowledge about our diet and nourish it as we navigate ourselves throughout the new year. Once again, I'm Tatiana Austria, your host for today's episode of Lifeline, where we improve our lives by feeding our minds.